30-foot shape sliding through the Amazon, a 43-foot predator bursting out of the Congo and tearing into a rhino, winged reptiles over African swamps, and massive humps moving across Canadian lakes. These are terrifying ancient creatures that might still exist in the wild. Neodysaurs are exactly what they sound like. Dinosaurs, but new, or maybe not new at all, maybe just still here. Across the Amazon basin in Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru, people have reported seeing creatures that don't belong in this century. The most common description is the big one. Massive body, long neck, heavy tail, amphibious, a sauropod type creature. Witnesses say it moves through the rivers and swampy lakes. And then there are the land versions. Stocky, thick-legged animals compared to iguanodons, heavy tails dragging behind them. A few reports even describe upright, more bipedal reptiles, built like predators. Long skull, powerful legs, watching from the tree line. Explorer Percy Fawcett wrote about second-hand reports of enormous three-toed tracks found in Brazil. One of his contacts claimed to have seen a giant long-necked reptile near the Brazil-Bolivia border. In 1921, there was an alleged iguanodon-type sighting in Colombia. A Brazilian man named Alvaro Mesquita described encountering a camptosaur kind of creature near a swampy lake between the Purus and Jarua rivers. And in 1995, geology students in Brazil's Sincora Mountains reported seeing two creatures in a river, around 30 feet long with 8-foot necks and tails. This sounds pretty ridiculous. I mean, real living dinosaurs? But the Amazon is massive. Huge swaths of it have never been explored. If something ancient managed to stay hidden, this would be the place to do it. The story of Kasai Rex starts in 1932 in the Kasai Valley of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, with Swedish plantation owner John Johnson and his servant. While out in the bush, they ran into a rhinoceros and tried to quietly sneak past it. As they were cautiously trying to avoid getting gored by the animal, something huge burst out of the undergrowth and attacked the rhino instead. Johnson later claimed the creature was about 43 feet long, reddish with dark stripes, with a long snout packed full of sharp teeth. It looked like a giant reptile, almost like a dinosaur. Johnson even managed to snap this photo just before the thing sank into a lake, leaving the rhino carcass floating dead. Newspapers called it the Kasai Rex, and the rest is history. Now, whether it was ever real or just a wild tall tale is still up for debate, but Kasai Rex is one of the most famous surviving dinosaur reports from the 20th century. The Kongmato shows up in early 20th century expedition records from what is now Zambia and parts of Angola. The name roughly translates to breaker of boats. One of the main written sources comes from explorer Frank H. Melland, published a book in 1923 called In Which Bound Africa. In it, he describes stories he was told about this large, red, flying creature living in swampy regions near the swamps. According to Melon, locals described it as having no feathers, a long beak full of teeth, and a wingspan estimated between 4 and 7 feet. When he showed the people illustrations of prehistoric reptiles, their eyes widened as they pointed to a pterosaur and said that's what they'd seen. There are also accounts from the 20s and 50s of missionaries and travelers in northern Rhodesia claiming encounters with something large and winged that attacked canoes. It's pretty cool because these accounts were written down by colonial era explorers decades before, modern cryptid culture really existed. And the descriptions are pretty similar across the board. Leathery wings, tooth-filled beak, no feathers, swamp habitat. It reads less like folklore about, a spirit and more like sightings of a genuine animal. The ropen comes from Papua New Guinea, especially around Umboy Island. It's said to be a flying reptile-like creature that hunts at night. During expeditions in the 90s and early 2000s, researchers like David Wotzel interviewed villagers who described the ropen as having a long tail, leathery wings, and in some accounts a glowing light. The glow is often said to appear along the body or wings at night. That detail is important because researchers who've documented the accounts say villagers connect the glow to the creature feeding on bioluminescent organisms. Multiple interviews recorded consistent details. Wingspans larger than any local bat, no feathers, long pointed beak, and a tail sometimes described as having a diamond-shaped tip. Some witnesses claim to see it perched on cliffs near caves. In 2004, a small expedition led by Wetzel reported seeing this distant flying object at night that kind of matched descriptions. And next up we have Ogopogo, one of Canada's most famous cryptids. People have been talking about something strange in Okanagan Lake, British Columbia for a long time. Long before settlers showed up, the indigenous people told stories about a powerful water spirit that matches modern-day descriptions of the creature. But early settlers in the late 1800s began reporting something similar too. They describe it as an animal rather than a spirit. In 1872, a report in the British colonist newspaper described settlers seeing a creature with a long body and a head rising from the water. Over the decades, there have been hundreds of reported sightings. Many describe a series of humps moving across the lake, sometimes compared to a serpent. Others describe a long neck and a head visible above the surface. There's been some pretty convincing footage over the years too. Okanagan Lake is over 80 miles long and reaches depths more than 750 feet. That's not a pond. It's massive, cold, and it's murky in sections. Whether Ogopogo is a large sturgeon, floating debris, or something genuinely undiscovered, sightings are pretty persistent, and it's not just tourists. Some reports come from boaters who know the lake like the back of their hand, and they insist what they saw wasn't any log or regular fish. Sticking with British Columbia, Canada, in 1972 there was a wave of odd sightings at Thetis Lake near Victoria. Multiple witnesses reported seeing this large reptilian creature in the water. This one was less of a sauropod thing and more of a humanoid-like creature, almost like the creature from the Black Lagoon. According to local newspaper archives from that year, sightings were serious enough that police temporarily restricted swimming in the lake. The lake isn't enormous, which is part of why the story caught people's attention. I mean, it's not this massive glacial lake like Okanagan. Unfortunately, no physical evidence was ever found, but the reports were documented in real time by the media, not decades later as folklore. But in that populated area, multiple unrelated witnesses described this large reptilian creature. So what exactly were they seeing? The Mongolian deathworm is said to slither under the scorching sands of the Gobi Desert. It's described as a thick red worm, sometimes up to 5 feet long. Apparently, it can kill at a distance. Stories say it spits venom or it discharges electricity, and it mostly comes out during the hottest months. The tales go back generations, and explorers like Roy Chapman Andrews in the 1920s recorded them firsthand. Decades later, cryptozoologist Ivan Mackerel led expeditions into the desert, interviewing people who insisted they'd seen the creature or knew someone who had. Every description hits the same beat. It's bright red with a thick body, and it rarely moves across the sand. They report seeing shapes under the sand, and some stories the ground itself quivering as the worm passes. I guess it's kind of like the sandworms from Dune. People swear that it exists, and the Gobi is massive. I don't think it's impossible to imagine there's some kind of deadly worm that could be slithering under the sand. Altimaha, or Alti, is said to live in the winding rivers and marshes of Georgia. Sightings go back to the 1800s, often coming from fishermen and boaters navigating the Altimaha River system. People describe a long serpentine body, a prehistoric reptilian dinosaur kind of head, sometimes flippers, and a long neck. One famous report comes from shrimp fisherman Buddy Sullivan in 1981. He saw the creature surface near his boat. It was gray, it was massive, moving deliberately through the current. Others are reported seeing humps in the water, strange ripples, and big shadows that quickly disappear. The river stretches more than 130 miles, cutting through swamps that get thick and overgrown. It can be hard to see through. Deep in parts of the Congo, people talk about something in the rivers called Mokele-mbembe, which roughly translates to the one who stops the flow of rivers. As you can probably guess based on that name, it's big. The way it's described is pretty specific. Long neck, long tail, big, heavy body, with smooth gray or brown skin. It's said to move through the rivers and swampy areas, mostly sticking to deep water. Sometimes it comes up near the banks to feed on plants. Fishermen say they've seen part of a neck rise up or a tail cut through the surface. Some claim there are huge tracks left in the mud along the shoreline. Size estimates are all over the place, anywhere from 16 feet to as much as 75 feet long, so maybe there's more than one of them. When explorers showed up in the early 1900s, they wrote this stuff down. In 1909, German explorer Ludwig Frere von Stein recorded descriptions of a massive water creature from people in the region. Across more than 100 years, the core description hasn't really changed. Out in northern Australia, there are stories about something called Burrunjor, and this one ain't the lake creature. It's got a big head, razor-sharp teeth, powerful back legs, and tiny front arms. Basically, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Most of the accounts come from Aboriginal people, but ranchers from the outback have also reported massive three-toed footprints in the dirt, and livestock disappearing in what they can't explain away by, normal predators. There's even a report from 1985 near the Roper River of a family seeing a dinosaur-like creature around 20 feet long, apparently covered in feathers. And that has been the video. I will catch you, yes you specifically, in the next one.